we're really going to focus on sales again, and a kind of a part two, how we can take sales to the next level effectively. And we're going to really hone in on the most important conversations that people have with prospects in order to bring that prospect to close. So what we're going to do is quickly recap very briefly what we spoke about on the previous session, so everybody's up to date. We did mention these two types of diagram very simply. If you're a business owner or working in a team, you're probably familiar with the famous funnel, which is a great method to do business and drive growth, but usually the customer is the afterthought. So we positioned the image on the right, which is my right, probably your left, the flywheel. So the flywheel is thinking around a better way to grow, where companies align their success with their customers, e.g. that red circle in the middle, and kind of create delight and loyalty, and I suppose by putting the people who matter first. So in this stage, the flywheel model is something that will help your organization grow better. And ideally, this is by putting the customer experience at the forefront. For anybody who's interested in reading more, I've just put a link in the chat just to, I suppose, get a really good insight into how this could work for your business. Are you able to see the screen, Burak?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Super. So again, the funnel on the left is, we kind of call it, it's almost broken. And now we're focusing on this idea of a flywheel, which is free of friction, that helps you gain momentum and gives a better experience as opposed to just focusing on the products. We looked at these companies yesterday. Again, the commonalities that these companies had was they grew big and fast based on the fact that they were SaaS models. They weren't doing anything new. They were people selling glasses, music, beds, but they put the customer and built themselves into the day-to-day lives of the customer. So, when I wake up in the morning, I listen to Spotify, I order an Uber. So these experiences happen every day. And this kind of helps a business like these grow fast. And a lot became IPO in under 10 years, which as founders on the call today, usually the goal is to grow, to sell, to retire, or to go IPO. What I would recommend, if any of this spikes your interest, we have what we call is a growth grader. You can see down the end, it's a practical tool, and we'll follow up with this presentation, which allows you to enter your website into HubSpot and get an idea, how your business is built and what areas you can improve on in terms of, prospects, promoters, and customers. So I'd recommend maybe take a look at that. Okay, so without saying too much, just to break the ice, as Burak said, my name is Cara. I'm currently based in Dublin. I manage the HubSpot for Startups team in EMEA and Latin America. My background is I finished college in Spain and I ended up working in an investment company, Telefonica in Huayra, and I did not lose the urge to keep working in the ecosystem since then. So I've worked in startups and different companies supporting startups going forward. So enough about me. I'd love to hear about who's on the call today. Maybe there's a few familiar faces, but if you could tell me, like we discussed yesterday, maybe where you're dialing in from, and for fun, what would be your theme tune if you were entering a wrestling ring? Just put it in the chat here. Caracas, Venezuela. One of my favorite accents, Guillermo. One of my favorite accents. Bienvenido. Any theme tunes there, Guillermo? So Burak, what about you? Kiran from India, very welcome. very welcome to the call. Sharaf, welcome Switzerland. Wow, what a mix. The last call I was on today was 20 people from Tel Aviv, so this is fantastic. Sharful, Bangladesh, very welcome to the call. Anybody have a theme tune that they would listen to if they were, maybe it's quite an American thing, that if they were going into the ring? Not to worry. Okay, well, listen, it sounds like there's people from all angles of the globe, so thank you for taking the time today. So before we kick off into part 2 of sales, we're just going to look at a few trends in the ecosystem. So like we did yesterday, where we discussed how, you know, right now it's so easy to get started, but to get started correctly as a business is difficult. We're going to just kind of take this conversation forward a bit more to see, I suppose, you know, what is actually happening in the industry this year and next year. So let's start with the number 99. Does anybody know what 99 things could represent? Okay, so Jermaj has said his team's tune would be "Things Can Only Get Better." Definitely a team tune for 2022. Very good, agreed, Jermaj, and nice Irish or humor in general. Thanks for that. So yeah, 99 shockingly are actually the number of average number of app subscriptions a business with 100 to 250 employees would actually have. So yesterday we discussed the process yesterday of a founder making sure, yes, all the tools are out there, but making sure you're able to connect the tools correctly and making sure everything is in one database that gives you back time, not take away time, is important. Another trend is 65%. And we discussed, you know, how yesterday I was in a lift in the UK and a lady was complaining that the speed of the lift was too slow while in the lift on TripAdvisor. So 65% of customers expect a response within 10 minutes to any marketing, sales, or customer query. So that is something, you know, should we include chatbots on our website as a simple takeaway? What channels does your customer use for marketing your business? Again, and I think I've learned this from LATAM. The guys in LATAM, Guillermo, they use WhatsApp. No, this is big business in LATAM and Israel. This is how you do business. So dependent on what you're selling, who you're selling to, and where you're selling, you know, the channels can change. I spoke to a guy recently, he was selling oil tankers and his audience lived on Quora. So again, something worth looking at in terms of exploring who your prospects are. Another fast tip is that 61% of marketers say their current company uses account-based marketing. As startups, this is something we probably don't need to worry about at the moment, but if you're going after big business, the elephants, maybe it's good to pick 1 or 2 to target each year. And finally, to kind of round up something that is, I suppose, top of mind, which is the 4 C's of COVID. A lot of people this year have created content around community, contactless, cleanliness, and compassion. So these are types of content people created around sales. And I'll follow up with an article around that. But a lot of consumers think that these thoughts that brands should really help them out in their day-to-day lives. So how are you adding value to your customer, to your prospect, to enable your business to grow? Okay. And the ultimate trend, previously it was content is king. This year, to succeed, the consumer is the center of your sales and marketing strategy. Okay. So again, I've asked our sales and marketing team to give a few more trends. You can have a look at this after today's conversation, but it might give you some tidbits to use and practice going forward within your business. So again, that's just some information to get you thinking, to get the brain warmed up. So what are we talking about today? What is the focus? So today's agenda is really part 2. Primarily, the focus is, as I said, one of the most important conversations salespeople have with their prospects is the discovery call. This is like the proverbial fork, I suppose, in the road for you and your prospect. So either they're a good fit for your product or service and you can move forward with the relationship, or it's time to part ways. So this is something that startups tend not to do, e.g., immediately realize that this prospect, John Doe, is not the right person. See you later. Oftentimes, startups tend to spend a lot of time in terms of talking to prospects. So today we're going to focus on sales qualification around this discovery call to see if people are a good fit for your product or service. And we're going to look at the kind of frameworks you can use and the process you can use to execute on this. And then we're going to wrap up with some sales metrics and the technology that you can do or that you can use today to get started. Anything you'd like to add to that list, or any questions at this point? Feel free to put it in the chat. Okay, well, if there's no questions, let's get started. Okay, so let's start with the famous discovery call. Does anybody want to hazard a guess as to what the discovery call is? Anybody want to give a definition in the chat? Cold call. Nice, Burak. Old school. It can indeed be a cold call, yeah. If it's inbound or outbound, it can be both. Anybody else? So we discussed yesterday that prospecting is the process of kind of developing new business by maybe searching for potential customers online. And then, when you get one of those leads, usually the first step is actually connecting with the prospect. So the goal is to get the meeting, and that first call is very much about identifying whether you can provide this guy or person value and you can move further along the sales call or not. So this would be known as the discovery call. Okay, so let's look at this in more detail. So the discovery call is very much tied into, really understanding what people want. Okay, so I was in the Pendulum Summit. It's like a leadership summit that happens every year. And there was a guy, an American guy, and he actually had made 10 million. He had lost 10 million, and then he made 10 million again. And like, everybody was like, oh my God, how did you do this? And he said his process was actually quite simple. He found out what people wanted. He went and got it and he gave it to them. And that was as simple as things were. Now, one example, he used to run a chain of hotels, and he sent 150 students around the world for a year to visit different hotels and talk to him what the biggest problem was. And he realized on the research that the biggest problem was that people couldn't check into hotels when they wanted to. If they were, airplane staff, if there were people, arriving in late, there was a 12 o'clock check-in or a certain time of check-in with extra charge if you wanted to change the time. So this is something he implemented, this open checkout across his hotels. And, he made big business. He made millions off a simple change. So I think the thing is here, understanding what your prospect wants, really understanding, what this customer's problems are, and making sure that you're able to deliver on those problems and provide a solution. So yesterday we spoke about creating a persona is really the number one best place to begin, even if you have more than one, maybe three, but understand what the problems these people have, and what is your unique value proposition. So has everybody, or does anybody want to write down their unique value proposition in the chat? So again, it's really just, I suppose, a unique selling proposition, a clear statement that will describe what is the benefit, how do you solve for your customers' needs, and what distinguishes you from the competition. So again, this is something that needs to appear obviously on your website, but when you're having a conversation with your prospects. Okay. So let's dig a bit deeper, okay? So we've looked at, what a persona is. Now let's look at how our selling motion has to match the way our buyers would like to engage. We discussed yesterday and today, we mentioned that not everybody, lives on LinkedIn. People can live in lots of places. So we need to understand where these customers' experiences are happening and how we can connect with these people. Here's an example of where I had to connect with different investors. In this case, actually, this was in Chile. I think Agustin Redondo manages Huayra in Chile, which is an incubator. And I connected to Agustin via LinkedIn, via a Vidyard recording. And he, as you can see, was happy to, connect. So again, understanding where the prospect lives is extremely important to actually connect with them in terms of outreach. So Shariful Alam has put in set of authentic product and services that help health conscious living. That's our USP. Nice. Okay. So again, in the most ideal case scenario, you've done the cold outreach, Barack, or, inbound, where you've actually had marketing generate a lead for you, and you actually get to the stage where you are going to speak to this lead. So you've done the prospecting and it's going to the connect call. So has anybody on the call prepared a discovery call before, or has a kind of a process they use for a discovery call? Yes or no? So Guillermo's businesses were the gateway for everyday Venezuelans to exchange their inflated Venezuelan bolivias into digital dollars. Nice. Okay, so nobody has created, a lot of no's in here. Okay, this is no problem. This is why we're on the call today. So not everybody has created a discovery call yet. So again, this is very much focused on saving you time as a startup. So like we said, one of the most important conversations a salesperson or a CEO or a founder is going to have with their prospects is the discovery call. Okay. It's not always immediately obvious when you even, speak to someone for the first time, which path to take. So that's where sales discovery calls and qualification comes in. So by asking the right questions, you'll really be able to determine, okay, should this relationship continue? And if so, what next steps are appropriate? So, Munrozon, sorry, have you created a discovery call or a connect call that you have with your partners to kind of connect with them? Yes. Okay, super. Okay, so I suppose let's go in a bit deeper. Okay, before we look at the secret sauce in detail, we're thinking, okay, this connect call or this discovery call is where we're going to do the bulk of our qualification. So it's definitely not where qualification starts. As every step of the sales process, you're continuously evaluating a prospect for more and more specific characteristics of that persona. Oh, nice. So he was following Bant. Fantastic. We're actually going to look at that, Morunzun. Thank you for putting that in. That's an interesting one. So exactly. So, I mean, according to a guy, a famous salesperson, Bob Opalo, who's like the founder of Sales Consulting Group, was one of the largest in America, Inflection Point, there's a hierarchy of qualification. There's like where sales reps kind of qualify the prospect at different levels, the organization level, the opportunity level, and the stakeholder level. Again, this is something that's not relevant for today's conversation, but what we're going to do is think about what we spoke about yesterday. So in the past, and this is going to bring up this question of BANT. Is everybody familiar with BANT? A few people have brought this up on the call. It's like a framework people use. So like a long time ago, IBM revolutionized this idea. Like it's a mantra familiar to most salespeople for the last 20 years, where you qualify your prospects based on budget, authority, needs, and timeline. So it looks like about 3. Oh, nice. Excellent. So yeah, Murad, you know very well. So this kind of idea or framework is very useful when prospects don't know that their solutions could be found on Google, or maybe blogs or Instagram or Twitter, or it's kind of when salespeople could identify a problem through kind of a well-delivered positioning statement. They could confirm their prospects' interest and how they could fix it. And this is actually still a very relevant use of framework, but today's prospects, we would say, are much more informed about your competitors' products and services. They have almost kind of identified their own needs and a lot of people have started to design their own solutions, all before even talking to a salesperson. So just with the guys in the call, has anybody made a big purchase in the last few years? If anyone wants to put a big purchase they've made into the chat, just let's use this as an example. Has anybody purchased a car or a house or a dog, or anybody want to share with us? Okay, so I mean, we're all founders here, so there's probably not a lot of big purchases happening, but I'm a minimalist, Barack. Okay, fair enough. Great answers. Good. We're keeping the money for the startup. So yeah, I mean, I suppose let's getting back to sales qualification. I mean, I've asked people recently, what was the last search they've made on Google, and people are looking for the answers of a crossword, or what time their children's creche closes at. So I mean, people are very well tuned in actually getting a solution to their own needs really fast without even wanting to talk to a salesperson. So in HubSpot internally, we've developed okay, Shariful is a lot of minimalists here. Okay, great. And we can't even tie it down to country, but okay, great. So as you can see here, we have this kind of other acronym called GPCT, which is what a lot of people would call the secret sauce, which allows us to best qualify a prospect truly and understand if the prospect could actually benefit from our products or services. So it's like a kind of a 4-part, 5-part framework. The main areas here, I totally agree, it's like a long string of acronyms. Let's just go back. But yeah, I think it's something that everybody can benefit from. So when you have that call with your prospect, if you are in the business of renewable energy or software as a service, or selling, t-shirts online, it's very important to listen to your prospect on a call. So you've scheduled the call, and then you want to make sure that the agenda is set, where you understand the goals, the plans, the challenges, and the timeline of the prospect. So some questions that a lot of people could incorporate into their conversation. Has anybody created a buyer persona that they can put into the chat? Maybe give us an example. What type of buyer persona? If they're a marketing persona, a CEO. Either way, I suppose everybody is going to have different goals. It's our job to understand or identify, if the prospect wants or needs to hit these goals. So there's really only a few reasons to buy any product. And it's Sorry, tough question, but you're right. There's really only any reason to buy any product, and that is probably to make more money, save money, or avoid the risk of losing money. So a lot of the time, companies haven't even defined or quantified their goals very effectively. And they haven't kind of determined, I suppose, how their goals are related to their day-to-day metrics and milestones. So I suppose this is an opportunity for yourself or a salesperson to really establish themselves as that advisor, to begin to help the prospect reset or quantify their goals. So again, when discussing goals, it can, I suppose, help the prospect think bigger or more realistically based on their experience. Things like, what's your top priority for 2021? Do you have revenue goals? These are all relevant. Moving on then, a plan. Now that you have a sense of what the prospect's individual company goals are, you want to find out what their current plans are to implement in order to achieve these goals. So you really want to nail down whether they've tried this before and how it worked. You want to know why they think their plan will succeed or fail. So during the process, things like, okay, like last year was a bad year, should we do better? We should do better with reaching our goals this year. So that kind of tips you off for the fact that they aren't really in control or confident that their plan will work. So this is your opportunity again to go, okay, do you think XYZ might make it hard to implement your plan? Are you open to thinking differently about next year to reach your goals? And then that's where you come in with your challenges. So this is a very important part of a sale. The Challenger Sale is actually a great book. It's very much about, I suppose, helping a prospect, I suppose, anticipate their challenges and understand how they can overcome them. So for example, why do you think you will be able to eliminate this challenge now, even though you've tried in the past and you're still dealing with it? Okay, so this is where you create the pain as to what's going to happen if they don't have your product. From my experience, mothers in general, Irish mothers in particular, are very good at creating pain. My brother lived in Australia for a very long time, and he moved back to Ireland, and he received a tax letter from Australia. And my mother rang Kevin because it came to the house, and she said, Kevin, you've received, you need to pay tax in Australia. And Kevin said, no, it's fine. I don't live there anymore. I'm paying tax in Ireland now. And she says, well, what if your children will never be able to live or get into Australia? So that's like the pain funnel she has created. And Kevin immediately picked up the phone and paid his taxes, for example. So again, this is something where you challenge someone on whether something is working and should they shift gears to something more solution focused. And like any good sale, and we'll just wrap up here, it's all about timing, territory, and talent. When do they need to achieve their goal? When can they implement a plan? And when do they need to eliminate their challenge? Okay, any questions on that? So Murad, thanks for the help there. Your buyer persona is the head of R&D, or biologists are the end user. So yeah, this is important to understand who you're selling to. I remember we did a WeWork webinar there recently, and the guy had all his buyer personas were students, and he was like, yeah, they don't have any money, blah blah blah. And we said, well, who's the decision maker? Is it their parents? And he said, Jesus, yeah, it is their parents. So that's who they need to get the authority or kind of buy-in from early days. So again, at the very simplest level with Murad, if you've decided, okay, you can help your prospect achieve the goals, etc., it's time to really start about how they'll make the decision and where the money is coming from. So I would add in their budget. It's critical to establish who your prospect's like what your prospect's budget is. Like you can't help them if they cannot invest in your solution. And that's a good point. Murad, maybe the research lab managers. Exactly. So you want to find out also what else are they spending their money on. So if they're investing elsewhere to solve for the same problem and it's not working, and you have a solution that you can more effectively offer within budget, you can say, okay, we've established that your goal is X and you're spending Y. Now to kind of try achieve X, but it's not working. In order to hire us, you will need to invest in Z, since Z is pretty similar to Y, and you're more confident that our solution will get you to your goal. Do you believe it makes sense to invest or hire us? Okay. So again, this is all food for thought. Now, the final thing is, very final thing, and this is something you'll hear again and again, in a world where prospects are busy, like a lot of people might be selling to a lot of people that don't have the budget. So people set up buying committees where, you know, they're sent out to kind of find solutions, and they're usually lower level, non-budget wielding, non-people managing employees that are looking for the latest and greatest kind of challenge overcoming solutions. But as a result, salespeople don't get to talk to the economic decision maker until later in the process. So again, great salespeople, yes, reach out to higher ups, but realistic salespeople will kind of are willing to try and turn influencers into champions. So the famous is, you know, you've done the qualification, you've had your discovery call, and now you want to move to demonstration or presentation, and you're going to do it with the same person, but they're not the authority and they're not the budget carrier. So, you know, a give get of, okay, I'll do a demo if you have the CEO on the call. Okay. So a mistake many buyers and sellers make is thinking that the right way to sell internally is to make it an internal conversation. But make sure to kind of stay involved by guiding the process with the influencer all the way through. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, let's move on. Okay, so has anybody been in a situation where, you know, they're talking about budget and they're immediately told this is too expensive, or they get pushback? Has this happened to anyone on the call? Okay, Arvin Torres, this has happened to you. Did you close the deal eventually, Arvin? Nice, good job. Anybody else? Okay, so we have a few yeses in there. It was a challenge, but we did close it. Nice work. Always be closing ABC. So yeah, I mean, if you contact with someone, do a great discovery call. The person is, you know, the perfect person. And then they say, okay, this, like, sorry, we don't have budget. We don't trust you. We don't need it right now. Or, you know, there's no like urgency for it. So, I mean, objections will happen quite a lot, regardless of maybe how good you work a sales process. So a big one is lack of budget. It's too expensive. So objections based on price are the ones you'll come across most frequently. And that's because purchases come with obviously some level of financial risk. And, you know, as a sales rep, you'll want to consider the positioning of your product and service and how to demonstrate that value. Anything you did that we can learn from there, Arvin, that worked in order to close the deal when you got kind of objections? So low budget objection is a common one. So yeah, I suppose by providing value and kind of painting a picture of where your solution will take them, then ideally they can be convinced that this kind of is enough reward to justify the risk. And again, take like, okay, what do you guys know best? Your startups, you know other startups. if you look at our business, you know, startups, the first person they trust is other startups. So if you can get case studies or referral calls from people they trust, that is extremely important in order to do business. People like to do business who other people they know, they like and trust do business with. So it's all about that conversation. Okay. Again, lack of need is something that happens a lot. Arvin's put in, it may not be the price, but if we can convince them that the price is worth it, that's a good start. Ask and find out what the real objection is. Okay, Ayush, you've put in a fantastic comment there. So Ayush has put in, like, ask the question, like ask what is the situation. If they say, look, Ayush, I don't see how this can help me. I mean, this may seem like an objection on the surface, but actually it's an opportunity to give information to the prospect and get information from them. So use open-ended questions. And I suppose to qualify the prospect and evaluate the need if you find a fit and leverage it to demonstrate value. So here's some open-ended questions. And again, this is something that you can look at after today's call. But building trust and challenging trust, like Ayush said there, where you ask the question, why? Okay. Again, it's not important for me right now. This is a challenge. It's not important for me right now. I don't need it. So the goal here is to identify if timing actually is an issue or if the prospect is trying to kind of brush you off. So one way to do that is by asking them to elaborate, again, asking them why it's not important or what competing priorities currently have their attention. So listening closely is extremely important. So LAIR is a form of listening. I think, let me just find it. It's a LAIR model, it's called. Let me get this for you. People have probably seen this before. And this is like basically the key takeaway there is in listening closely to determine if their response involves concrete timing issues or vague excuses. And if they're doing backflips kind of to justify inaction on a real pain point, you may have an opening. So when all else fails, schedule an appointment with them at a later date. So Arvin's put in, I think it will help also if the questions we asked are directed to what they want them to understand, to what we want them to understand. Excellent. So this is extremely important. Like we said, lack of need, lack of urgency, lack of trust, and lack of budget. So again, use these objections as an opportunity. Here's a link. I'd advise you to bookmark it, to have a look. But these are all types of kind of positionings here that you can use to get. You know, if you don't have the decision maker on the call, we'll do a demo if you have your CEO on the call. So these are all extremely important. And like we said, make sure always set up the next meeting. Any questions on that before we move to the sales process? So again, thinking back, like we said, it's very important to know when to disqualify and to know when to qualify. The qualifying questions, you can use BANT, you can use GPCT, but it's really important to have an understanding as to what methods or to what the actual prospects' goals, plans, challenges, and timelines are. I'm going to put the guide to sales qualifications in there. So everybody, again, not to give you too much information, but, you know, bank this, look at it in the future. This will come up. This is something that everybody working in a startup needs to be aware of. Okay. So yesterday we looked at this model, okay, very, very simply. Okay, this is a very important thing for most businesses, which is the sales process. Okay, so this is really now we're moving to step 3. Okay, so you have your buyer personas, your connect call, your discovery call, and then, you know, you're moving that prospect from connect to add value, to close, to delight. Okay, so this is where the sales process comes in. Has everybody set up a sales process? Maybe yes or no in the chat if that works. So Arvin, rock and roll Arvin, Burak, excellent. No surprises there, good to hear. Mohammed, excellent. So any just for the guys who haven't set up a sales process, I mean, any tips, I suppose, as to, you know, how you set up a simple sales process? Any tips on a sales process? So for the sake of an example, we're obviously going to go through a sales process here. Any tips from the guys who've done it? A side question there from Murad. Do you plan to provide any lead generation tools on HubSpot? So Murad, we actually do have quite good lead gen tools on HubSpot. We have a lot of lead capture forms, bots, landing pages, conversion paths. So these may be things that you're talking about, but feel free to reach out to me directly after the call if you want to discuss in more detail. Here is my email. Okay, so Arvan has put in identification is really valuable because this eliminates time wasted with prospects, excellent, who are not a good fit. Ayush has put in, we have somewhat a sales process, leads, calls, convert. Okay, excellent, excellent. So let's keep this simple. Okay, so not every sales process is the same, basically. And what we would say is a sales process is very simply a set of kind of like repeatable tasks, which I suppose ideally is what the salesperson uses in order to bring a deal from prospect to close. Okay, so implementing a process is the most important because you can streamline the completion of any task, simple or complex. Ideally at this stage, very simple. We don't want process to get in the way of, you know, success, but we would suggest having visibility and a sales process helps you understand where the potential revenue is and how you can grow as a startup early days. So let's look at the 6 key steps to a process. Okay, so prospecting, like we've all suggested, which is really, I suppose, you know, getting an idea of who these people are. 2, connecting. This is, e.g., you know, connecting with them on LinkedIn and starting the process to see if they're a good fit. And then number 3, which is the real important one, the discovery. Okay, so this is something we've researched in a lot of detail now. Okay, so we want to be able to map this sales process with our business. Okay, this is something a few people have done the call. So Arvin's put in, understanding your sales process is very important in getting a sale. Exactly. And like every month, like we have a buyer persona meeting where our teams come together and they like talk about deals that they've closed and deals that they've lost and why they've lost them and why they closed them. And this is something like, you know, that we're able to unpack and view because we have that control and visibility into our sales pipeline. And the more revenue you bring in, it's not rocket science, the bigger your business gets. So understanding, like Arvin said, your sales process is vital and instrumental in terms of selling success. So all of this process, 4, presenting, 5, handling objections, and 6, closing the deal, which is the most fun part of any sale. But this is built into a pipeline. So processes obviously differ from company to company, even product to product. Your sales process or your sales pipeline should be unique and reflect the typical buyer's journey. So the sales pipeline provides salespeople with like a visual representation of your prospects and where they are in the sales process. So it allows sales reps to kind of forecast revenue and to look at the stages, the opportunities when predicting how many will close in terms of deal given a certain time frame. So every opportunity will move through your sales pipeline at a different rate, depending on the level of interest, urgency, or how much research they've done already. Okay. So let's just take, before we look at like putting this process into a pipeline, the final one there is closing. So this is a very important part of sales. And for many people, their favorite part. And this is a part that we actually haven't looked at too much. But yeah, extremely important in getting the commitment, negotiating contracts, and setting timeline for the contract close date. Okay. Okay. So heading into the closing conversation with a prospect is always a bit nerve-wracking, no matter how impressed they seem during the demo or how enthusiastic your champion is, I suppose, there's always a chance you'll lose to the competition. So making sure that you're able to set the expectations, handle the objections, and then arrange next steps is extremely important to practice within teams also. And here's a script that we would use in HubSpot to practice. Okay, so taking all these steps, again, dependent on what you're selling, what you're providing as a service, you would build this into a sales pipeline. Okay, so it's the process there again. And as we know, you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You cannot start with the technology and then try to figure out where you're going to sell it. So that's from Steve Jobs, who's usually not someone we argue with when it comes to this. So ideally, you take the process and you put it into some software, and this is where you manage the pipeline. So is everybody using software to manage their pipelines right now? Say yes or no in the chat. Excellent, Ayush. It's a lot of yeses. This is something, you know, whether you're a one-man band or a large company or, you know, a partnership, creating partnerships, or, you know, if it's a freemium model, having visibility as to what is happening within your pipeline and managing your pipeline is vital. So a CRM, excellent, Jennifer. We would recommend everybody use a CRM early days, and, you know, making sure that that lead intelligence is in there, so you're able to grow a healthy pipeline through careful assessment and kind of pipeline management. Okay, so as you can see here, so Murad is using Sales Navigator, but it's kind of expensive. Okay, Murad, I can imagine. Yeah, it's actually, I don't have it because it's expensive. So again, when you're building the pipeline, think of the process, define the stages of your pipeline, like you can see here. Identify how many opportunities typically continue to each stage. And make sure that each stage of the pipeline, in order to move forward, you need to execute on specific activities. So again, if you have the discovery call, they've answered their goals, their plans, the challenges and timeline before they move to negotiation or business buy. Okay. So again, you know, letting your sales pipeline shrink. A lot of people dislike prospecting, so it's easy to fall into a kind of a sales trap where you don't actually have enough new business to hit your numbers. So this is something that needs to be combated by, you know, taking note of prospecting and discovery. The closed loss stage is another important one. You know, if you feel like the lead has gone cold, take it out of the pipeline. And this, as Jennifer said, you know, is very important that you are able to use a customer relationship management system, e.g. a CRM, to create a pipeline that will allow you to automate tasks, log activities, report, deal creation, and a lot more. Okay. Now, okay, so Ayush has a CRM, but I don't think we use it fully. Okay, why do you think that's, Ayush? Are you able to track how often people are using it, how many deals are created, meetings scheduled, define value, contract sent? So again, sales decisions are metric driven, and this is highlighted up here. So we want to get insights into our pipeline. And a quick way to do this is build reports, build forecasts. And in like businesses like HubSpot, this is straight out of the box. Like startups have a high burn rate. Like success is not always something that will happen. It will happen, but things like actually managing reports, managing performance helps see success. So Ayush says, we're not able to use them properly. Lead management is working fine. Okay, Ayush, connect with me after this call. You've got my email address. We can happily talk about, you know, your CRM's performance. So as you can see here, guys, you've got some key reports. So again, you do upload your contacts into a CRM, you start managing your pipeline. And this is, you know, something that is tried and tested. It does not have to be perfect, but then you've got access to like the deal forecast by owner, as you can see on the top left. This helps you understand how much revenue is on the line. And these reports show you how much revenue is forecasted by deal. So you can easily filter, like this is a favorite report by a lot of business owners. You know, you can see there that you know, Seth Lockhart could potentially bring in 37 grand if, you know, he closes the business correctly. You've got your sales performance where you can see how many meetings have been scheduled, where the deal is, discovery, negotiation, closed one, everybody's favorite, how many deals have been closed. And I suppose these reports are extremely important for revenue operations leaders seeking kind of what results and what growth levels people are going to see month on month. Okay. So guys, I'm just going to, I suppose, wrap up there with a summary slide for everybody. We have about 3 minutes to go. There was a lot of information there again today. On Friday, we're going to jump into the tool and practically build all of this stuff together. So don't feel like, you know, we've done a lot of talking and, you know, what happens next, it's not tangible. We're going to do this together on Friday. We will build reports, we'll build a pipeline, and we'll manage a deal from, you know, awareness to close. So on that note, is there any questions from anyone at this stage? Okay. Any questions, Bodak, or is everybody asleep, or what's the story?
Of course, they're all different time zone.
I know.
It is 8 here in Istanbul, but I think all of the participants have different, probably Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India, and all Eastern countries are, I think, in midnight nearly.
Crazy.
And also in the morning from South America.
Wow.
So it is morning over there, and they I think begin with the day with your webinar. So this is very exciting, of course. I would be great. Maybe we have a short session how efficiently we use HubSpot. Maybe Murat, that's a great idea. I mean, you should tell us about how we can use efficiently HubSpot. That's also a great tutoring session, training session. Maybe I need as well.
Nice. Nice.
Sometimes I'm lost in HubSpot, by the way. It is like, I mean, if you use lots of modules, it is lots of support, but also very complex as well.
I agree. And I think that's something we can incorporate on Friday as well, Burak, if that works for you to put it into.
It will be great. I mean, for all of the participants and also for myself as well. And I think startups may also use benefiting not only the sales flow and other modules of HubSpot while they are closing their sales.
Nice. Well, listen. Thank you too, and thank you for everybody for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'm conscious that you took a lot of time out of your day. So I hope you could get some benefit. Have a good rest of the day, wherever you are in the world. Ciao, ciao.
Stay safe and healthy. Thank you. Bye-bye.